What's up everyone, it's Dan with Main Deck, and I am bringing you the third video in our series, our full review of Grand Archive TCG's first set, Dawn of Ashes, which just went up on the index the other day. So this is our first chance to kind of look through everything. As a reminder, the caveat I provide on all these videos is that this is just my initial take on things. The game is still very new and very unexplored, so we may find that opinions on these cards can differ or may shift over time. So don't take this as gospel, but this is going to be just kind of my my informed first look at things that I don't know, for whatever it's worth, basically. So in this video, we're going to be looking at all of the uncommons this time. If you want to catch the other videos, we've done rares and super rares and ultra rares already, and commons are coming very soon, so they'll all be linked down in the description below as soon as they're out, as well as at the end of the video. And I think in this video, right at the front end, I want to mention, if there are any cards here you think are pretty spicy, cards you're excited about, go ahead and leave a comment down below and let me know what you're excited about. And also, if I screw anything up, which I have done so far, just go ahead and let me know in the comments below too, so I can make sure that everybody gets the correct information about everything. So with that said, we've got 72 cards to go through here, so we're going to be going pretty quickly. These are uncommons, so they aren't all as quite as exciting as some of the rares and super rares are. So I may go through some of them relatively quickly, especially when they're more sort of vanilla, French vanilla style cards. So just bear with me. We'll get through them as quick as we can, but we better get started. So we're going to jump right into our very first card. We're once again starting with some Norm Regalia. So we're starting with Beast Bond Boots. Beast Bond Boots is a 0-cost Tamer accessory Regalia item, although it has no class bonus, so it can be used with anyone. Banished Beast Bond Boots. Your champion gains Spell Shroud until end of turn. Activate this ability only if you control an animal or beast ally. So again, this is sort of a soft class requirement where Tamer is going to be the most likely to play animal or beast allies, but you can certainly play them in other decks as well. And giving your champion Spell Shroud is a nice way to prevent losing to like a Rye deck with Arcane Blasts or something like that, or honestly, any fire deck that's running Fireball. Fireball is going to be a popular card, but especially in Tamer and Mage decks because they both increase their level. So you can use this to really prevent getting aced. And again, it's in your material deck. It doesn't mean you have to materialize it. So it might be a nice option for Tamer decks just to keep in mind, especially if Rye is something they're concerned about. Curved Dagger is a 0-cost Regalia item, Regalia weapon assassin dagger with class bonus. As long as your champion is attacking an ally, Curved Dagger gets +1 power. So it's a 1 power, 1 durability weapon for for anybody, but for assassins they get +1 damage when they use it to attack an ally. This is all right. I think attacking allies is going to be something you have to do a lot of the time. The thing that is unfortunate about this is you don't get the damage buff to stack onto like critical effects or anything like coup de grace. So this is a solid weapon though. I mean, I think depending on your assassin build, I think some assassins may be more attacky and some may be less attacky. I would certainly include it in maybe like a fire assassin where you're looking to even just getting that +1 on something like Rending Flames where you can double the damage is going to be very helpful. So otherwise, just using it as removal is not bad either. It's an all right card. I think a lot of assassins are going to run it, but I don't think it needs to be run in every single assassin deck. Fire Resonance Bauble is next. There are actually 3 of these, and once we get to the other ones, I'll go through them very quickly because these are all very similar. These are 0-cost Regalias that you can banish to draw a card, but only if your opponent controls a fire element champion. So there are 3 different ones. I don't think you're going to stack every material deck with all 3 of them. I think what you're going to do is really see what your local metagame or the metagame you're expecting looks like. If fire is like overperforming in the meta, then Fire Resonance Bauble will be something that you can run, and most games you'll be able to play it to get a free draw. Or if there's a particular element that you're like weaker to and you need to kind of shore up that matchup, you might put one in. But otherwise, I think you'll more often want to run First of all, you want to make sure you have a slot for Grand Crusader's Ring, and then otherwise any of the zero-cost ones that can be triggered against more decks than just what, like 1/3 of the meta or something, then I think those will be more useful material deck slots for you. However, again, if one element's overtaking, then this will be an easy thing to slot in just to make sure that you have a little bit more of a game against a wider swath of the meta. Jewel of Enlightenment. This is a 0-cost Regalia item, Mage Crystal. Banish Jewel of Enlightenment. Put an Enlightened counter on your champion. That's it. So this is an interesting card. I think you're not going to use this as like a card draw item specifically, because really this says 0-cost, banish it, draw 1/3 of a card if all you're doing is drawing cards with enlightened counters. But I would see this more like a card you would maybe include in something like a Rye Mana Weaver deck, where you're trying to use your enlightened counters to do something else and you want to make sure you can trigger that effect. So Rye Mana Weaver, you can remove 4 enlightened counters to duplicate an arcane or a mage spell you're casting. Maybe it is arcane, I can't remember. But either way, if you need that extra enlightened counter just to get these things triggered, I can see this being useful. But on the surface, it does feel like a weaker card, so you definitely don't want to use it for card draw. It would have to be a deck where you specifically need to get those enlightened counters to do something, and having access to that just free one on the start of your turn might be really useful and critical in that deck. Speaking of decks like that, Mana Limiter is a 0-cost Regalia. You can't remove enlightened counters from your champion to pay for costs. Banish Mana Limiter, draw a card. Activate this only if your champion has 6 or more enlightened counters on it. This is one we've seen plenty with the Rye print and play and starter deck. This is a more useful card. This is for in a lot of Rye decks, you can really use this as a 0-cost draw card as long as you have the ability to set up that 6 enlightened counters. You generally don't want to put this into play until you already have 6 enlightened counters, or you're about to get them on that turn. If you put it in before then, you might struggle because you might need to draw a card to be able to like try and respond to something. You won't be able to. It also prevents you removing enlightened counters to pay for things like Endura Scepter of Ignition as well as Barrier Servant. So it's a card you need to be careful with, but basically it's just saying as long as you can have 6 enlightened counters on your champion at some point relatively soon, this is a 0-cost free draw card. So you're going to put it in any deck where you think that's possible. Melodious Flute is a Regalia item Tamer instrument. It does cost 1, but it has your champion gets +1 level as long as you control an animal or beast ally, and then has class bonus Banish Melodious Flute. The next Harmony action card you activate this turn is a melody in addition to its other types. So this card is the shoe-in for the sort of Tamer music engine deck. Obviously, the 1 cost, your champion getting +1 level as long as you control an animal or beast ally, is actually quite good. You want to have those levels to activate the Pride, and Pride is typically on animal and beast allies. So it just kind of, it works when it needs to in that way. But the class bonus is kind of the spicy thing here, where you can set up turns where the big issue with the music decks is needing to have both a melody and a harmony in your hand to get like the full benefit of the Harmonize effect on the harmony card. Okay, yes, I have looked it up and made sure. I'm fairly certain about this, but I will correct it in the description and the pinned comment below if I'm wrong about this. I will check right after I finish recording this video, but I do believe what this means is that the next Harmony action you activate this turn is a melody in addition to its other types. That means Harmonize will trigger on the card with Harmonize itself, because Harmonize says if you've activated a Harmony this turn, and at that point you have activated, as you're resolving the effect, you have activated both a melody and a Harmony. So you have activated a melody, therefore it will trigger on itself effectively. So in that case, this is an easy inclusion in any music deck, because this allows you to instead turn your Materialize phase into a sort of a free melody for the turn, allowing you to get the full Harmonize effect off of just a single Harmony card, which I think is quite good for that deck and quite important for that. But if you're not playing that, I'm not sure I would include it. The +1 level might be good. It really depends on how many other options you have to increase your level to be able to make sure you have Pride active. Poisoned Dagger is a Regalia item. Assassin Dagger costs 0, enters the field rested. Again, Assassin has a number of these things where they kind of show their hand a little bit, which is interesting. It's not exactly like how an Assassin acts. Should generally be a little more stealthy than that, but they show the opponent what's going to happen next turn. This one says, rest this, banish Poisoned Dagger, deal 1 damage to target unit, and then class bonus until end of turn. If that unit would take damage, it takes that much damage +1 instead, which this is a very cool card for Assassin. It makes sense, like balance wise, why it comes in rested, because this class bonus can cause you to be able to deal a lot of extra damage to the opponent if you are going a little bit wider with Assassin, or if you have ways to deal multiple attacks. And importantly, this works really nicely with the thousand cuts, I think, the Luxem attack that Assassin has that allows you to remove preparation counters to keep bouncing it back to your hand and replaying it. That means you deal +1 damage on every single attack, and you can, again, a unit can target your opponent's champion, so you can use this to go for a finisher as well. I think this is a really nice card. You do want to make sure that you can like get more than just like +1 damage off of it, but it also can be used as removal in a pinch. So yeah, it's a cool card, but it just has to kind of fit with what your strategy is, of course. Safeguard Amulet. This is a 0-cost Regalia item cleric accessory. Has no class bonus. Banish Safeguard Amulet. Whenever your champion would take non-attack damage this turn, prevent 4 of that damage. Just going to be something that you want to play if you are concerned about, you know, action spell damage, Rye decks, that kind of thing. It only allows you to prevent damage against your champion, so you can't use it to protect allies. And it only prevents 4 of that damage, which is, you know, I think 4 is often enough, but sometimes if Rye is going really crazy, that doesn't quite deal with it. However, the important thing about this wording here is it's whenever your champion would take non-attack damage this turn, not the next time your champion would take non-attack damage this turn. Which means I think it has some very strong applications against certain win conditions. If Rye is trying to deal all the damage in one turn, it prevents 4 damage from like every Arcane Blast, every Fireball. If you have a Rye deck going for Advent of the Stormcaller, which is going to do 2 damage for every banish there. Actually, I'm not sure how that one works either. Boy, we have a lot of little ruling things to look up in this one. Actually, I have it up right here. For each card banished this way, choose a unit and deal 2 damage to it. Does this have a ruling listed for it? Is dealt in multiple instances. Okay, I think that actually clarifies it right there. So I'm glad we looked that up, and props to the index for having all these little ruling things in there. So I believe, my understanding, that means that each of those would be a separate instance of 2 damage. So Safeguard Amulet would prevent 4 of each of those instances of 2 damage. So if it's an Advent of the Stormcaller deck, Safeguard Amulet single-handedly basically shuts down the deck. Which may be an interesting thing. That may be like a sort of metagame thing that happens if that deck is a particularly strong variant of Rye. Being able to just put a single card in any material deck to sort of shut that down would be quite powerful. Now, of course, like a Fire Rye can then run Disintegrate or something to be able to deal with Safeguard Amulets. So yeah, there's some interesting back and forth here. This will definitely be one you're going to want to think about for your material deck, depending on what the metagame looks like. Seer's Sword is a Regalia Weapon Warrior Sword. Class bonus on attack, Glimpse 2. Has 1 power and 3 durability, and it costs 1. This has been a very solid sword to have in Lorraine. I don't materialize it a ton, but that's because I think these haven't been the builds that really take full advantage of having a lot of durability on weapons, and I do like that about this. This is a great one for like a water warrior deck that's trying to use things like Imbue and Frost and Galahad to be able to like pump up a weapon and get multiple swings with it. And the on-attack Glimpse 2 is very nice for just trying to filter to the cards you really need to finish the game. Stronger attacks, Crux cards, something like that. It's a solid sword. It will work great in the Spirit Blade and Soul deck, but that, you know, it does cost 1. That's kind of the big drawback of it, but that 3 durability is really where it's at with that card. Surveillance Stone. This is one of the options, 0-cost Regalia item that just draws a card under a certain condition. This one is whenever an opponent declares an attack with a unit for the 3rd time each turn, in the turn, basically, then you can banish it to draw a card. So your opponent has to attack 3 times in total with any combination of units, or allies, or champions, including attacking with their champion multiple times. That works for it too. So really, it's just a card you can put in if you do expect to play against decks that do that. Then it is a free draw card. Your opponent does have the ability to play around it, but usually that's wrong. They should just be attacking if they can. Yeah, I mean, it's an option. It's a card draw option. Sword of Seeking. This is a 0-cost sword. This is a great sword to have. I am thinking that stealth is going to be something that it's not going to be uncommon to see with all the fairies and with for certain assassin decks. Having a 0-cost sword with 2 durability that also has True Sight is very useful to have. It's always something that Lorraine can materialize. when she gets to her level 1 if it's important, and it's not too hard to get the damage here to the point where it can take out a stealth thing. It's important to note that when your weapon has True Sight, when you combine the weapon with an attack, that attack still has True Sight as well, so the full attack can target any sort of stealth ally, so that's how you can get the damage to deal with something like Dream Fairy or something. It's a solid sword. I think it's definitely one you're always going to want to think about putting into your Lorraine deck. And I mean, if you expect to see 0 stealth, then maybe not, but otherwise you probably want to have it. Tome of Knowledge is a 1-cost Regalia item mage book. So this is the 1 card that you can turn into the ultra rare mage stormy book, arcane book, Book of Lightning. I don't remember what it's called. Regalia item mage book, class bonus. Your champion gets +1 level, and then banish Tome of Knowledge, draw a card. It's a very solid card to have. That +1 level can count as having multiple cards in your hand if you're playing multiple efficiency things on your turn with it, so you can really make that value back. Again, I'm all about with these 1-cost things, if I can make that value back somehow on paying that 1 card, then I feel good about them. And then if you don't need that +1 level anymore, you hit level 3, and then you've got tons of levels, you can banish it to draw another card instead. Warrior's Longsword is a 1-cost weapon. Class bonus with Warrior. Warrior's Longsword gets +1 power, so then it becomes a 2 power, 2 durability. Very solid stats. 2 power weapons are pretty good, actually. Like, I wouldn't discount... 1 power weapons are kind of like the baseline. When you start seeing 2 and 3 power weapons, that's actually pretty powerful, especially when you start combining them with things like that do extra damage, like Rending Flames, or any other buffs on characters like Lorraine's level 2 or Lorraine's level 3. So yeah, I mean, this is the 1 cost here is worth it because 2 swings with a 2 power weapon can add quite a bit of damage. I think it'll be interesting to see what we end up calculating like the 1 cost and the materialize to be worth as far as damage. But if you're just trying to aggro things out, end the game, like ideally end the game before your opponent's gotten to level 3 when they have a lower health pool. Paying any of the costs just to get that extra damage might be the clincher to win the game. All right, so here we have Water Resonance Bauble and Wind Resonance Bauble, very similar to Fire Resonance Bauble. It doesn't matter which element it is. If an element is popular, you might want to play these cards just to be able to get cards. But if it's sort of an even metagame, I don't know. Don't worry too much about them because then you're just gambling on cards slots in your material deck. Okay, we are out of the Regalia now. We are moving on to normal cards that go in your main deck. This one is Clean Cut. It's a 2-cost Warrior Sword attack with 2 power that has level 2+ on kill, draw a card. This is an interesting card. I guess I'm in a couple different frames of mind about it. With Warrior Lorraine level 2, you really want to be like swinging in with cleave attacks, and then when you get to level 3, you really want to just be punching Lorraine into the opponent and not attacking allies. So it's a little tricky to know when you want to play this. I mean, I would play it maybe not on the turn I level to Lorraine level 2, but also not on the turn I get to level 3. So if I'm doing a level in between, if I'm doing a turn or 2 in between there where I'm not going to level 3, which happens definitely, this becomes a little nicer, able to clear out allies. But I don't know that this is always an auto include because it's just sort of awkward. But that said, being able to kill an ally and draw a card is very good. That's definitely something you want to have. If we ever see a weapon that gives your attack cleave, this attack will be extremely good. This will be another option to be able to cleave and draw multiple cards. I don't know that we will, or if we do, this card's going to go from being all right to pretty good. I might be underrating this card a little bit because killing something and drawing a card is good, but it just feels like a little awkward with where the level is placed. And with our current warrior setup as well. And also, I mean, maybe this would change if we saw a different sort of warrior, a different warrior in set 2 or set 3 or something that plays a little differently. Maybe this would get a little more value too. But as it stands, it feels just a little clunky to me. But it's certainly something I think you could run and get some value out of in the right setups. Okay, next we have Conceal. Conceal is a fast action assassin skill, cost 2, which has allies you control gain stealth until end of turn, prevents them from being targeted by attacks. Importantly, this does not, it does prevent your whole board from being targeted, so if your opponent's going wide, it does not prevent against Cleave from wiping you out, because Cleave does not target at all. And having True Sight, also gets around it. So I think it's a pretty niche card. I do think this is part of the combo with the map. You don't necessarily have to play all stealth allies. You can have other allies, grant them all stealth with conceal, and then use that super rare map. I can't remember the name of it, but there's a couple of them, and it's the one that gives all your stealth allies unable to be intercepted. I think that can be fairly useful, but again, this game is different than other games. Not everything can intercept, and not every deck has interceptors in it or has them available to intercept with. So I'm not sure how playable that really is, but it can be used just at a pinch to protect one or even multiple allies, and that can actually be pretty important too. So it has no class bonus. Anyone can run it. I'm not sure how often you want to, but it could be something you'd slot in a little bit. I'm a little lower on it, I think, though, than but maybe playing some will change my mind about it. Woodland Squirrels. Woodland Squirrels is a 0-cost 1/1 ally tamer animal squirrel. This is a card that you use in decks where you're going wide. And you're trying to aggro very fast. As you get to the late game, this becomes a not very useful card. Importantly, though, it is a 0-cost card that just comes out of your hand and doesn't put anything in your memory, which means it does help with balanced decks. So if you're trying to do a very hyper aggro deck and using like Gildus or something to try and keep balance, Woodland Squirrels can actually allow you to set up that balance a little more easily. While providing some extra damage also. And obviously tamer decks might consider it as an animal option just to be able to kind of like spam animals out there if you're trying to use the action that allows you to place a beast in play for each animal you have. This could be useful for that too. So it's definitely got its share of uses. It's not going to be in every deck. It's going to just be in kind of very specific decks where it has some particular synergy, or just playing a lot of things to the board and attacking with them right away is very useful for you. Blazing Direwolf. Blazing Direwolf is a 4-cost ally tamer beast wolf with 4 power and 4 life. Has Pride 5, so it can't attack unless your champion's level 5 or higher, and then it has class bonus on attack, deal 2 damage to target unit. This is for the Fire Tamer deck. This is a very strong beast card. It's got great stats. Pride 5 is not that hard to hit, and the on attack, deal 2 damage to target unit allows it to clear out an interceptor before it even has a chance to be intercepted, as well as just dealing extra damage to your opponent's champion. So it is just a strong beast in that, specifically in that Fire Tamer deck that is looking to play Fire Tamer. I don't know that I wouldn't include this in a Fire Tamer build specifically. It'd have to be kind of a weird Fire Tamer build. I feel like this might be one of those auto includes in that deck though. Blitz Mage is a 3-cost ally mage human with 3 power and 1 life. That's what it does. That's it. She attacks. She, like in Grand Archive, everything kind of has haste, so she's not like completely vanilla like in other games. She does have haste. I mean, she can attack the turn she comes into play effectively, but yeah, you run her, and probably if you're trying to be very aggressive, and that's not necessarily, it doesn't do anything else for you, right? So I like these in decks where you're trying to be aggressive, but otherwise it's kind of a pass. Just like if I saw a 3/1 with haste and magic, I would say the same thing about it. That's where I'm at with Blitz Mage. Clumsy Apprentice is a 2-cost ally mage human with 1 power and 1 life, and has on enter, deal 2 damage to your champion and draw a card. So this card I think is pretty good. I like this card quite a bit. You do have to not lose the game, and that's one thing, but basically taking some damage to draw a card to keep your advantage going, and having something in play to plink some damage off your opponent. You can think if your opponent isn't going to intercept it, this is sort of like dealing 2 damage to you, but 1 damage to them on the turn you play it, and then drawing a card. If it goes away after that, that's fine. You progressed your win con a little bit, you drew a card, you just don't die, right? And just like in any card game, the only life that matters is the last one that would kill you. You can take this damage as long as it doesn't take you out of the game. I think this is going to be something that like mage decks will run, even though it has no class bonus on it. I think mage decks are going to like it just to be able to keep progressing that kind of card advantage and plinking a little damage off, just to try and slightly lower the threshold for that combo kill. But I also think like a human focused deck or I don't know, I guess I kind of feel like any sort of mid-range style decks that plays a little bit more control and can handle taking a little bit of damage, and maybe like combine some damage with the apprentice to take other allies out or something, might be okay playing this too. I think it'll see play in a little more than just like mage decks. I think anything going slightly mid-range might like this. Probably not Tamer though, again, because they have that animal beast sort of tightrope that they have to walk. But yeah, interested to see who ends up playing it. All right, Korhazi Courier. Shout out to Red Zone Rogue. This is the Red Zone Rogue collaboration card featuring one of his original characters. Korhazi Courier is a 3-cost ally assassin human with 1 power and 2 life. She does have stealth, and she has class bonus on hit. Draw a card, then discard a card. If a fire element card was discarded, choose a unit and deal 1 damage to it. This card is, I think, very good. Very strong card. The stealth is annoying to deal with, although it just means that you're probably going to be able to get a couple more turns of attacks off with her. But that's awesome. That's exactly what you want to do, which is get that on hit, draw a card, discard a card. There's no requirement to discard a fire element card to this, so you can use this to discard, other cards that have floating memory or something, if that's how it works. But if you do discard a fire element card, and props if it's also one with floating memory, then you get to choose a unit and deal 1 damage to it. It has that graveyard setup thing that fire really likes to be able to do to set up like your Rending Flames attacks, which again is also an assassin attack. She seems like she's well costed for what she does. She can deal 2 damage to the opposing champion with that, because that ping can target her can target champions as well as being able just to kind of like plink off allies here or there. If there's like a clumsy apprentice sitting around and you just want to get rid of it, you can ping 1 damage onto it. And another cool thing about this, actually, now that I'm thinking about this also works really nicely with our Poisoned Dagger, because it creates multiple instances of damage. So you can get the 1 damage on the opponent's champion, which becomes 2 damage, and then you can get the ping, which would then become 2 damage as well. So it's she seems like she's going to fit into a lot of decks. I think she's going to be very playable in various assassin builds for sure. Non-assassin builds, I don't know, maybe you like the stealth, but I think mostly assassin builds are going to play her, but they're going to really like her. Creative Shock is a card we've seen plenty of again in the Rye Print and Play starter deck. Creative Shock is a 3-cost fast spell with Action Mage. It's an Action Mage spell with draw 2 cards and then discard a card. Has class bonus. If a fire element card was discarded, you may choose a unit and deal 2 damage to it. In my experience, you want to already have the fire card in your hand. Every single time I play this with no fire cards in my hand, I draw 2 and then none of them are fire cards, and then I just end up discarding something random. But again, like if we're talking about that mage deck where you're trying to discard floating memory, like the Mad Mage floating memory arcane card, this does allow you to discard any card, not specifically a fire element card like some other cards do, to be able to set up that floating memory. But ideally you can draw 2, discard a fire floating memory card, deal 2 damage to something at fast speed. This card's kind of the whole package. It does everything that you really want to do. In fire Rye decks, this is, I think, a shoe-in. It's something you're going to be running for sure. But it's you do want to make sure you have enough fire cards in your deck to really make it work also. Ember Song. Ember Song is a 2-cost Tamer skill melody. It's slow and it deals 2 damage to up to 1 target ally. That up to 1 is interesting because you can just play this for the class bonus second effect as well. Class bonus, target ally you control gets +2 power until end of turn. Ideally you want to get both, but this is the fire melody that kind of sets up the rest of your turn. If you're playing the music engine, it deals 2 damage to something. It can wipe out an ally. It can then pump up your damage on one of your allies. It does what you need to do. I think it's a great card for Tamer fire decks to run, actually, and regardless if you're running the Harmonize stuff, it probably does a lot of what you want to do if you're trying to be relatively aggressive. So it's a pretty sweet little card for those decks. Energetic Beast Spawner. We have a number of Beast Spawners. There's a full cycle of them in each element. The fire one is they're all very similar as well. Fire one is a 4-cost, 2 power, 2 life ally, Tamer human, with your champion gets +1 level as long as you control an animal or beast ally. They all have that effect. So these are one of the ways you can ensure you get that level. Again, the requirement to control an animal or beast ally really is the reason you want the +1 level in Tamer anyway, so it always kind of works when you want it to. And it has class bonus floating memory, which is just great to see. It's a great thing to see. It's not you wouldn't really play this outside of Tamer because it doesn't really matter outside of those. So in Tamer, it just kind of does a little bit of everything you want it to do. It's a nice card to run in your probably limited non-animal, non-beast slots in your deck. Fire Momentum is a 3-cost attack warrior sword. It has class bonus. Fiery Momentum gets +1 power for each fire element card in your graveyard. So here we're talking again about that sort of graveyard setup that fire is trying to do. This attack can get absolutely massive. And Fire has a number of these things where late in the game they just become overwhelming. The blaze grows as the game goes on. However, this one is certainly playable early on as well if you need the attacks. You just need to be able to punch some damage in. You don't want to miss a turn where you could have attacked with your Lorraine or something. So yeah, it's a solid card. You do want to build a deck that sets up your graveyard a little bit, but it's also actually not that hard to get, you're going to be playing like fire spells, you're going to be playing fire attacks and everything. Just make sure you have enough fire cards, and this can still grow anyway, but you can also play a deck that's more intent on discarding cards and specifically just kind of like growing this out of control. Focused Flames is a 2-cost action mage spell. For mages, class bonus makes it cost 1 less to activate, so it only costs 1. It deals 4 damage to target ally. It is slow, but for 1 cost, dealing 4 damage to target ally is a lot of damage. I mean, the one thing that keeps me away from this card a little bit is just that it can't target the face, and sometimes the Rise just trying to pile as many cards that can target the face together as possible to end up winning the game. But as far as efficient removal, it doesn't get much more efficient than 1 cost 4 damage. 1 cost is going to destroy most allies in the game. So yeah, it's a solid card to run. You just I mean, so far in builds I usually put like a couple in, but I don't and it's usually a card that I'm okay taking out too, because it doesn't quite do everything, right? But the one thing it does is pretty efficient. Hasty Messenger is a 2-cost ally warrior human, 1 power, 2 life. And it has on attack, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. I think this card is really solid. That's where it's at. You do have to discard the card in order to draw the card. So you can't just like draw a free card or something when you're attacking with it and you have no hand. But it again allows you to discard anything, including arcane cards that have floating memory, or normal cards that have floating memory, or just any fire card to kind of build up your graveyard for those fire effects, and then draw a new card to replace it. It has 2 life, so it's kind of annoying to take out. It only has 1 damage, which isn't like great, but I think this would be a card that you could play in a lot of decks where you're playing anything that cares about setting up the graveyard or enough floating memory for it to really grant you some advantage periodically. If you don't have any of that stuff and all you're doing is like filtering cards, it's like okay, right? But I think there's enough stuff in the set and Fire where this is going to be a card you're going to want to think about fairly often. Impassioned Tutor is a 2-cost ally mage human, 1 power and 3 life. With on attack, your champion gets +1 level until end of turn. So this could be run in Tamer decks as well. There's no class bonus requirement on it. She doesn't do a ton of damage, but 3 life is pretty hard to like retaliate against or anything. And the +1 level can get you that extra, those extra resources you need to be able to end the game. Not end the game, but like play efficiency cards or something. It's pretty unlikely that 1 level is going to really get you where you need to end the game, just because like in mage decks, you're usually comboing off quite a bit and that you're going to get plenty of levels that way, but it also can help you in that regard. It's an okay card. I don't think it's an auto include even in Fire Rye. But it is an option if you're just trying to find ways to grow your level, especially in the mid game where that little +1 level can be more critical. Increasing Danger. So this is an action mage spell with slow, 2 cost. It has draw a card, and then each player draws a card into their memory. This card is actually quite good, I think. This card is very strong in its ability just to effectively, it gives you 2 cards, it gives your opponent 1 card. It does cost you 1 card that way to do that. But in particular, in like the mage deck, where you can also gain enlighten counters from doing this, you can really rack up some extra advantage on your opponent. You get to draw a card right then. The opponent gets to see the card that they drew next turn. See it in their hand. You can look at it at any time, of course. And then the following turn, you get to get the extra card in your hand for that turn. I just think like a lot of these Rye decks are really just trying to like build quite a bit early on. And this is a way to build, even though you're giving your opponent some stuff, you can usually get around that just by like playing board wipes or something. If you're giving them allies to attack with, you can board wipe the allies then that you gave them. So you can kind of end up making that value back. And I think this isn't only playable in mage decks, by the way. Any deck where you don't necessarily have a ton of early plays, if it's not a hyper aggressive deck where it needs to be attacking every turn to win, or it's going to just run out of steam, then you want to play this. But also, I guess this can give you some steam too to keep going. So I just think all around, this is a card you want to think about in your Fire decks. I think it maybe seems a little scarier than it is to play, but when you play it, just being able to get 2 cards to their 1 at the cost of your 1 card is like it's kind of like parity, but it's really card parity in that you're spending 1 to draw 2 and then giving them 1. But you're seeing more cards is the important thing. You're digging deeper and you're finding some of the things you need. Your advanced element cards or something that you need to end up winning the game, or finding better options for cards you can lose to materialize, that kind of stuff. So I think it's a good card. Patient Rogue is a 2-cost ally assassin human with 0 power and 2 life. It has class bonus. Patient Rogue has stealth as long as it's awake. And at the beginning of your recollection phase, Patient Rogue gets +3 power until end of turn. So I think this card is pretty cool. It's going to have stealth the first turn you play it, because you're probably not going to attack with it that turn. And then any turn where it attacks, it kind of becomes revealed and then is able to be attacked back. But that does mean for 2 costs, you're probably going to get in at least 1 3 damage attack, and then it has 2 life, so it requires a little bit more input to be able to get rid of. So the opponent's going to have to put some sort of like meaningful attack or maybe a weapon use or something into getting rid of it, or they're going to take 3 damage again. Which, you know, I think that's plenty enough of a sort of a hard place to push the opponent into, where I do like this card quite a bit, I think, for assassin decks. It actually doesn't need to be an assassin decks either. You just lose the stealth thing, and it means that it can be attacked on the turn on your opponent's next turn. But against certain decks, like Rye's not going to attack it, right? And Rye will just have to spend another removal spell to get rid of it. So I could actually see putting this in maybe more aggressive Lorraine decks too, as just an efficient way to push damage out. Because really those decks are just looking for what's the lowest cost for the most damage. And this is pretty good that way. Purge in Flames. This is the fire board wipe. 8 cost with efficiency. Deals 2 damage to all units except for your champion. Class bonus, deal 3 damage to those units instead. Importantly, it does deal damage to your opponent's champion as well. Any fire deck that wants to play late, that wants to control the mid game and control the late game, is going to be playing this card. That's it. The efficiency is importantly not class bonus. The class bonus is just the 3 damage to those units. 2 damage board wipe isn't that strong though. It's like that 3 damage I do feel is quite important for that. So I think you're going to mostly see this in Rye decks, but I actually wouldn't be shocked to see some interesting sort of like mid-rangey Tamer builds that can really take advantage of that efficiency and play this card just to like clear out interceptors or something. I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen as well. Reckless Researcher is a 3-cost ally mage human with 1 power and 1 life. It has class bonus. On enter, you may banish a fire element card from your graveyard. If you do, choose a unit and deal 2 damage to it. I think this is a solid card. It's a solid card, although I'm actually not sure how exciting this card is, because it does kind of just play like a blitz mage, really, unless you're targeting the opponent with it and like getting through interceptors or something, because it deals 3 damage to something, except blitz mage then has to be answered, or the 3 damage is going to happen a second time. And blitz mage doesn't remove a fire element card from your graveyard, which you might want for some other, combo plays or something later on. In mage, that's less likely. It's more of like a warrior thing, but yeah, this is an interesting card. I kind of feel like I'd rather play Blitz Mage than it though. But you could play both if you want to just like target the face quite a bit, or have options for dealing with our other allies. In a fair, I don't know. I don't know about this card. It's okay. It does have some unique elements to it that Blitz Mage doesn't have, but it also doesn't get me like super excited about what it's doing, just because like the numbers wise, it kind of feels like a Blitz Mage. I might be missing an interaction with it though. Let me know in the comments if I'm missing some sort of interaction here that makes that really spicy. Shout at Your Pets is a 1-cost action tamer skill with fast that has, if you control an animal or a beast ally, your champion gets +1 level until end of turn. Again, it's a way for fire just to keep building up their levels a little bit to be able to attack with their pride creatures. And then class bonus, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. So, again, very nice ability to have in Fire. Fire loves doing that looting effect to be able to get things into the graveyard to set up their other cards. So I think this is a solid card for Tamer decks to run. You're going to want to look at basically what your pride numbers are. And like, you want to probably with your Tamer deck, you want to think about your sequence of like, hey, like when you're playing the ears to get the +1 level, and how often you're going to need this extra +1 level to like turn on pride based on, are you running pride 5s, pride 6s, like that kind of stuff. And then I think this draw card, discard a card is just going to be sort of gravy in setting up floating memory, setting up plays like that. I think it's going to be this is like a glue card to me. It's like kind of makes your deck work, but you just want to make sure the numbers are there. Spontaneous Combustion is a 3-cost fast mage spell reaction with deal 4 damage to target ally attacking your champion. So this is a lot like Focused Flames earlier in that it's only an ally targeting spell, but it costs more. However, it's fast. And so the nice thing is you can deal with something like, you know, again, like this, where was it? The Korhazi Courier, right? You can use this to deal with a Korhazi Courier before it is able to get the on-hit ability to give them any advantage like that. Because this is an action, it gets through stealth. So it definitely has some more uses. Anytime something is fast rather than slow, it's a little more valuable because, and sometimes a lot more valuable because you just have more options, more flexibility. And in a game where everything has haste effectively, that becomes even more pronounced. So I actually like this more than Focus Flames. It's not as efficient cost-wise, but it can do a little more for you than Focus Flames can. The ally does have to be attacking your champion though, but you know, a lot of the time in a mage deck or something, that's not going to be an issue. But this is not class bonus. You can play this in any fire deck, and it's an option to consider for sure. All right, Spurn to Ash. Spurn to Ash is an action mage spell, no class bonus, 3 cost. It's slow and has destroy target Regalia with memory cost 1 or less. I think certain decks this will be very important in. I think it's nice to be able to destroy weapons with it, but especially, again, we were talking about like things like Safeguard Amulet that can shut down particular decks. I think Spurn to Ash is a nice option to have just to be able to get rid of that and force the opponent to pop it that turn when it doesn't do anything or something like that. You can also use this to target like things like Mana Limiter or Surveillance Stone that haven't met their requirements to be able to draw a card, just to kind of like deny your opponent a card with it in sort of a worst case scenario. I think every deck's going to have something you can target with this. The question is going to be whether or not you can activate it in a time when that requirement hasn't been hit, so you can like kind of it actually does something. Because if the requirement's active, if it's like a Fire Resonance Bauble or something, then they'll just pop it and draw a card in response. But it's definitely a more niche card. But I do think it's actually more playable than it looks as well. And it's something to consider if your deck is really cold to particular cards like Safeguard Amulet for sure. Strapping Conscript is an ally warrior human with 2 power, 1 life for cost 2. Stat-wise, that's pretty solid already. And it has class bonus level 2+. Strapping Conscript gets +1 power and +1 life. I think in a warrior deck, this is a warrior fire deck. This is an easy card to include. In the early turns, it's still a 2/1 for 2, which isn't bad, and you can just get attacks with it. But once you get to level 2, it becomes statted very well for its cost. And this can definitely be a very annoying ally to see coming back turn after turn to try to keep dealing with, because it does a lot of damage, and with 2 life, it actually does require an investment to get rid of usually. So yeah, it's a solid card. Tempered Steel is a 1-cost action Guardian Warrior skill craft with slow. Put a durability counter on target weapon you control and floating memory. This is not going to go in every deck, but definitely if you're like trying to do a fire warrior with like Galahad or something where you want to be able to attack multiple times, or perhaps a Galatine deck where you're trying to build durability on something, I definitely like this there, where that floating memory can make up for the card that you're spending. The durability counter can actually do something pretty relevant. It's in the right deck. I can see this mostly as like a floating memory option. You can always use the fire cards to discard it and get the floating memory into your discard pile and turn it into a different card also, where I think that's very valuable that way. So yeah, it's a solid card in the right deck, but definitely not going to be played in everything. All right, moving on to the water cards now. We have a Aqueous Enchanting, which is an action with warrior spell, fast action, costs 3. Allies you control get your choice of +1 power or +1 life until end of turn, and then class bonus for warrior, floating memory. So I think this is really interesting. Warrior spells are not super common. I think they're more prevalent in water here, where we're going with sort of like a rune chanter theme. The flexibility of +1 power or +1 life is very nice. You can use this reactively on your opponent's turn to protect your allies. You can use this proactively on your turn just to push extra damage on. And you get the floating memory off of it either way as long as you're a warrior. I probably wouldn't play this in any other deck because 3 cost for the buff is over cost for that effect. For either side of that effect typically, but so you're really paying for the flexibility and the floating memory there. But I think if you have the ability to go wide, or if you have things that are very important to protect, then I like this card in the deck. And that floating memory is, especially if you're trying to do like a Mordred thing where you need to pay for everything with floating memory, then this is clearly a very useful card in that deck. All right, Benevolent Battle Priest. This is an ally cleric warrior human. 1 power and 4 life. So we're going to start to see Water's penchant towards having high life on their allies. For 3 cost, a 1/4 is pretty good stats. Just being kind of hard to deal with, annoying to get rid of. And then has class bonus on attack, recover 1. So she's annoying to get rid of, and she's going to push. It's sort of like a 2 life swing every turn she attacks. So she's not quite a 2/4, but it's like with that life link thing, effectively, she feels like that. I think we have to really see how Recover does. I think against certain decks, Recover is going to be better than others. Obviously, Mage isn't going to care if you have Recover. They're just going to be like, all right, whatever. I'm just going to kill you in 1 turn anyway. Tamer might, depending on the Tamer deck, Tamer and Assassin decks might go higher, like sort of like do a little plink damage, but then try and push a ton of damage later on. They might be able to just overcome it. But I think this is really going to shine in like warrior mirror matches against the more aggressive warrior decks, where that Recover will take you out of threat range, giving you enough time to like get to your level 3 and then take over the game. And I think that's where metagame wise, these water decks with, especially these water warriors with Recover, are going to gain ground, I think, specifically there. So it's a solid card for that deck, but is maybe a little meta dependent too because of that. Blue Slime is another 3 cost, 1 power, 4 life ally. This is a Tamer Beast Slime with Pride 4. Again, Pride 4 is very easy to hit. You probably will hit this level 3 for sure, because you're probably going to play the ears and get the ears out, and that'll give you everything you need. Has class bonus. Whenever Blue Slime is dealt damage, put a buff counter on it. So this is a little tricky because like in Grand Archive, your opponent can intercept things without retaliating, without dealing damage to them. So this isn't as crazy as it seems, but there are also ways to build around getting this. There are ways to just, you can play some water spells that just deal damage to your own things, just to like pump up your own Blue Slime. And it does just mean that if there's anything that deals damage to it, if your opponent plays any board wipe that doesn't wipe out the Blue Slime is going to get bigger. So it's going to have a little bit of a punishment aspect to it. But I think unless you're building around it specifically, it's going to be tough to really get this to go out of control. But I think it's like stats are okay anyway for what it is. So if you're playing a water tamer and you just want some beasts, I think this is a decent one to have. And it is nice to have a little like board wipe punishment in your deck as well. All right, Bubble Mage is a 3 cost ally mage human with 1 power and 2 life. On enter, rest target unit, class bonus until end of turn. If that unit would take damage, it takes that much damage plus 1 instead. So this is where we're going to start seeing some interesting interaction between certain classes too. Obviously in Mage, this is a great way to kind of add a little bit of a damage boost to some of your like end game kill things. Like if you're playing Water Mage and you're playing Advent of the Stormcaller, every instance of that 2 damage will become 3 damage instead. So this is a card where in like I think the Mage Advent of the Stormcaller deck, if you're playing the water version of that, this is going to be a 4 of, period. It can rest your opponent's champion as well, which I think is interesting. Playing some of effects like this, I'm not sure if this is the card you want to play, but you can play an assassin build that plays a few of these just as a way to like rest an opposing Rye or something, so you can get that damage buff off of Xander's level 2 from attacking rested units. And I think that's pretty cool too. But yeah, I mean, you don't get the class bonus is one thing. So you're playing a 1/2 for 3 with rest target unit. That's not necessarily that bad either, though. This can also rest interceptors so that they can't intercept. And it can also make a very difficult to deal with ally easier to take out, getting that little damage buff on it too. I think Bubble Mage is a very good card. I think it's going to depend a little bit on the deck. Some decks it's going to be an all-star card. Other decks, you might still play it and it'll be just an all right piece of like a way to like do something that you don't normally have access to while we're in set 1, but something that maybe has like more sets come out and we have more options for like resting units that are more geared towards other non-mage archetypes, then I think you would see it start to filter out a little bit there. But yeah, it's importantly too, this also means you can like class bonus to target something that has a little more toughness, and then use the Frost Nova. I think we looked at was in the rares or super rares, one of them, to deal 1 damage to everything that would deal 2 damage to that thing instead. So you can use it to kind of like get a little bit of an extra push on some of those water board wipe effect or water damage effects as well, which is going to be pretty useful. Fishing Accident is an action assassin skill. It's fast. It costs 1. It has prepare 2, so you do want to have 2 preparation counters if you want to get the full effect on this card. It has rest target ally. So again, this time it's target ally, so you can't rest your opponent's champion to get the damage buff on it. If Fishing Accident was prepared, put that ally on the bottom of its owner's deck instead. So you're either going to be resting it, or if you prepare it, you can bottom it, which is pretty strong, especially like if it's a floating memory ally that your opponent's like, haha, you're gonna have to kill this, and then I'm gonna get my floating memory. You can actually just go, I'm just gonna put it on the bottom of your deck instead, and not have to deal with it. This can get rid of cards like Arima that would otherwise be coming back on death, which is, I think, pretty strong. I think this is a useful card. If you're playing Water Assassin, it's probably something you're going to want to have. As a fast action, too, you can rest an ally as soon as it comes into play to prevent it from attacking you that turn. Even without preparing it, you can use it just to like buy a little time and then attack it on your next turn with your damage buff on Xander or something to get rid of it. So I think this is a nice card to have. It doesn't like excite me. It's not like, wow, like the best removal spell in the game, but it's cheap. And it's effective, right, at what it does. Giant Tortoise is a 4-cost 1/6. We did mention that there is a Tamer melody or harmony that allows your units to attack with their life instead of their power as their damage. And Giant Tortoise is really good there. I don't know if you play it outside of that deck, though. I mean, like, I'm just not sure. 6 life is a ton to chew through, but 1 damage is not a lot of damage. So I think in particular in the Tamer music deck in Water, this is where you would play Giant Tortoise. Mind Freeze is a 5-cost slow mage spell with floating memory as a class bonus, and banish level cards at random from target opponent's memory. Return those cards to the memory at the beginning of their next end phase. This card is, this card's hard to judge without really getting to play it. I think it's probably pretty good. I think this card can almost blank an opponent's turn depending on what you hit, what your level is, what they put down. It's going to be very dependent on the particular game state, but you can effectively give the opponent no good options on their turn if you either like get lucky on the random banishes or you manage to like pump up your level early on. And in a case where your opponent has nothing really to work with, banishing those cards doesn't only prevent them from having cards to play. It prevents them from having the resources in Grand Archive, because your cards in your hand are your resource for playing cards. It can prevent them from having enough resource to even play the cards that they want to, even if they still have them in hand. So I think this card's probably pretty good, and having floating memory is really the clincher that makes it like valuable, because I think you aren't always going to hit what you want to hit with this, but you can usually use this just to buy yourself a little bit of time. In a best case scenario, you're effectively time walking. By just, giving your opponent has to take the turn like, well, I don't have anything I can really do, so I'm going to pass. And then if that ever happens, you're going to feel really good, because then you can like floating memory to banish this to materialize your next turn. And then it's almost like you just got a free turn off of that. But it is going to depend on the game state, I think, a little bit. But this is probably something you're going to watch out for these mage decks in Water, because they're going to be doing stuff like this probably just to really screw with what you're able to do on your turn. Piper's Lullaby. This is a Tamer skill melody, 1-cost with slow. If you control an animal or beast ally, your champion gets +1 level until end of turn. Again, another melody that's doing that. And then this has class bonus, rest up to 1 target ally. So this is the solid Tamer melody just to kind of shore up your levels. This is a lot like Ember Song from earlier, just a way to make sure that you have the not Ember Song. What's the other one? I gotta learn all these. Shout at Your Pets. This is a lot like Shout at Your Pets. in water, except it is a melody, so it does work with the music package, in that it's going to shore up your levels if you need it for your numbers, and then resting up to one target ally will be, sometimes useful, sometimes not. It is nice that in Tamer decks you can rest Interceptors to get through your massive beasts, and that's really like what Tamer's trying to do to win the game, rather than just going really wide. It's often playing really, really big beasts that are hard to deal with, and having the option to sort of remove an Interceptor can allow you to win the game. So pretty sweet card specifically in Tamer music decks in water. And given just the number of options you have, it's probably going to be one you play in those decks. Sink into Oblivion is a 3-cost slow action mage spell with target player puts the top 3 cards of their deck into their graveyard. So this card, we have to see if a mill deck is real, if your opponent's able to mill the opponent. I'm hearing some inklings that it may be an annoying possibility that a mill deck might exist. It's kind of scary to mill the opponent because it gives them full access to floating memory and everything in their own deck, but you can also use this to target yourself if you're trying to do that, like maybe Mimi Selkie combo deck. But getting your own floating, if your deck's loaded with floating memory, you have high odds of hitting your own floating memory cards with this, which is pretty nice too. That's the only deck you're going to play this in. You're obviously not going to slot this in decks that aren't trying to either mill the opponent or mill yourself. Strike from the Mist is a 2-cost, 2-power attack assassin dagger with Prepare 2. It has class bonus as long as Strike from the Mist was prepared, it can't be intercepted. This is... I think this is showing us that the Water Assassin is probably going to be a little less like aggressive focused, a little more controlling, which makes sense for Water, and it makes sense for Assassin having, Assassin has multiple kind of ways of going about things. Because this is not a lot of damage on its own, and the Prepare 2 just makes it so it can't be intercepted. So you do need to have ways to, like, at the end of the game, pump the damage up on this thing. Or just take multiple turns doing this. If your opponent's trying to prevent damage with Interceptors early on in the game, you can deny that and just like keep poking a little bit of damage at them. I think it's going to be in that sort of deck. It's going to be a bread and butter card for now. I can see this being outclassed in particular decks because I guess it doesn't juice me up that much that it can't be intercepted, because that's sort of matchup dependent as well, whether or not that even does something very useful. But for now, I think it's going to be played in Assassin decks, and we'll see over time. And also, if Assassin gets more ways to pump damage into things, then this starts to get a little more enticing too, as well as with more Interceptors coming into the metagame in future sets, also into the card pool in future sets. Then I think this starts to become more interesting too. So yeah, I could be wrong. It could just keep being a useful card for Water Assassin, but we really do have to see how Water Assassin plays to get a real good feel for it. Sudden Snow is a 2-cost fast action mage spell with you may banish a card with floating memory from your graveyard. If you do, draw a card. And then until end of turn, allies enter the field rested. So I think this is really a fascinating card. It can be played in any deck that is, there's no class bonus. Any class can play this thing. And if you have enough, you just have to have enough floating memory to get it, but it effectively lets you turn a floating memory. So floating memory, if you want to think about it this way, floating memory is just like having another card in your memory when you are, when you're materializing something. And having a card in your memory is often like having a card in your hand, right? So like it's sort of like a floating memory card is slightly below, or maybe it's slightly below the value of a card in your memory because you can't draw it. However, you do get to select the card you banish, which is kind of important. And then having a card in your memory is below having a card in your hand because a card in your hand can still be used to pay for costs, right? So like Sudden Snow lets you turn a card from your floating memory into a card in your hand, which is going up like 2 tiers in value, more or less. For that card. And then on the other thing it does is allies enter the field rested. So I like this as just like a fast kind of disruptive spell that lets you sort of trade a floating memory card for another option in your hand. You do want to make sure you're using it when the one caveat to that is that that floating memory card might have been something you wanted to materialize with on the next turn, and now it's going to be a card in your hand. So you might have to then, use the cards that you actually have in your memory from playing Sudden Snow or something to materialize something. But yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting card that if you have enough floating memory to really make this work, and if you are worried about, allies attacking you, I think this is just a way to buy time And again, just slightly keep kind of like incrementally gaining resources, which is exactly the kind of thing that Rye wants to do. But other decks can play this as well. So Rye will get an Enlightened counter from playing it once he's level 2, which is also very nice. That again, just that incremental advantage. This person's comment is this just feels like what Wisconsin was this Christmas weekend. As someone who lives in the upper Midwest, I totally agree. This feels very accurate. Water Barrier. This is a 3-cost fast action cleric mage spell reaction. The next time damage would be dealt to your champion this turn, prevent all but one of that damage, and floating memory. This card I think is going to be a very popular card in water mage decks and probably water cleric decks when we end up seeing cleric as well. It's just the ability to prevent any sort of damage. It's not non-attack or anything. It's not attack damage. It's just any kind of damage. You prevent all but one of it, and then you get the floating memory off of it too. Very, very solid card. You do have to keep up 4 cards in hand to play it, the barrier and 3 other cards, which is quite a bit, but you can use this especially towards the end game to prevent gigantic swings and protect yourself. And then get to, use the floating memory to keep your card advantage up at the end game too, which is really nice. All right, on to Wind. We have Aeson Protector. Aeson Protector is a 4-cost, 3-power, 4-life ally with Intercept, and on enter, return target ally you control to its owner's hand. So the stats on Aeson Protector are very good. The cost is it has to, this is what we called back in the day in Magic, we called this gating. The cost is to bounce an ally back to your hand in order to be able to, take full advantage of this card. And that's actually in Wind sometimes a very good thing, because returning an ally to your hand lets you return something like a Tactician in order to draw another card when you replay it. Or any on-enter effects you get to reuse, which is really nice. So I think this is a pretty sweet card. You do want to have a deck that's built around being able to take advantage of those on-enter effects, but the stats are really good. The fact that it has Intercept and it can also attack that turn as a pretty beefy attacker gives it a lot of flexibility, and its use. 4 cost is high for an ally. It is a fairly high cost for an ally. But you're getting very good stats out of it, and as long as you're really taking advantage of that bounce effect, then it is quite solid. Arrow Trap. Arrow Trap's another fast action assassin ranger skill reaction. I think Ranger is in here too because of the arrows, I think, which is kind of neat. It costs 2. It has Prepare 1 and has return target attacking ally to its owner's hand. Class bonus, if Arrow Trap was prepared, destroy that ally instead. So this is it's a Wind way of just straight destroying an ally if you are an assassin or a ranger, and you have to prepare it as well. It does make me think that maybe we're going to see a little bit of preparation on ranger cards as well, which would be kind of a fun thing when we do get to seeing ranger. But for now, this is assassin's way of just controlling allies that are attacking them. It feels really to me like Fire plays fairly aggressively, Water plays fairly controlling, and Wind is sort of a mid-range style element. So this really fits with exactly what you want to be doing in Wind, and maybe that helps you if you're interested in like trying to figure out what deck you want to build. If you have a particular play style you like, you might be able to choose your element based on that and get you towards where you're looking at. Combo Strike is a 2-cost attack assassin warrior sword with 3 power. So again, this is another one that's shared between both assassin and warrior. It is class bonus, level 2+, on kill, wake up your champion. I think this card is a very, very dope card for Wind, assassin, and warrior decks to play. Being able to wake up your champion and get another swing with either another attack card or just a weapon you have in play or something. Taking advantage of either like Lorraine's level 3 to power buff or Xander's level 2 power buff on attacking rested units. Lets you just stack a lot of damage on your turn. And obviously in like the Lorraine deck, this is another way to get your really sweet Crux combos off once you hit level 3. So I think very much a powerful card in any sort of Wind, assassin, or warrior deck that intends to get to level 2. If you intend to get to level 2, you want to play this. And if you play it before level 2, it's still a 2-cost, 3-power attack, which actually is not that bad. We've seen other ones like Rending Flames with a 3-cost, 3-power attack before you get to use its effect. And that's like not great, but it's something. This is actually a little better than that, a little more playable than that too, even before you hit level 2. But great when you hit level 2. Wait, I want to mention one more thing about this. On Lorraine level 2, this is another way to be able to kill multiple allies with her and get her on-kill draw card effect. So I think this is, easy, great card for Assassin Warrior deck. Easy 4 of in those decks. Cry for Help is a 1-cost fast action Tamer skill reaction that has changed the target of an attack that targets your champion to an ally you control. Class bonus, that ally gets +1 life until end of turn. The artwork on this is absolutely hilarious, and I love this. Tamer's got a few ways of kind of like redirecting your attacks to her gigantic beasts instead. And if you can set up like any of these, like you can also, this doesn't have to go to a beast. This can go to like oh, I can't remember the name, the super rare that has vigor and big stats for Tamer. So you can attack with that super rare. It has vigor, then redirect and attack to it, and then retaliate and kill the thing that you redirected to it. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty sweet card. It's very efficient for what it does, and it can really, I think it can really stymie your opponent's plans. Definitely something to consider in those wind Tamer decks for sure. Disorienting Winds is a 5-cost slow action mage spell with efficiency, and return target ally to its owner's hand to draw a card. So there's nothing about this that requires you to play it in mage other than the efficiency is harder to take advantage of in decks that aren't Tamer and aren't mage. But it's only a 5-cost, so really you can still get it down to a 2-cost. Once you hit level 3, this becomes pretty well costed. Returning an ally to its hand and drawing a card for like 2 is really great, and especially if it becomes free. I definitely like this a lot more in Tamer and Mage decks than I do in Warrior and Assassin. But I think if you're playing like that, trying to play that more mid-range Warrior or that sort of more disruptive Assassin, this is something you can consider as well. Importantly, it's target allies, so you can use it to bounce your own allies to take advantage of enters play effects as well. Extortion Scheme. This is a 2-cost fast action assassin skill with suppress up to 1 target ally an opponent controls. And then class bonus, put a preparation counter on your champion. This is just that straight assassin disruption. You can't suppress your own allies, so there's no way to like take advantage of on-enter effects that you have. You're just using this to kind of prevent something from hitting you that turn and gaining a preparation counter. If preparation counters are important for your assassin build, you're going to play this card as a way to just kind of get tempo on the opponent and build up for your swings. Otherwise, I don't think you're going to play this. But I think in those decks, it's going to be very good. Fairy Whispers is a 1-cost fast action mage spell with Glimpse 3, and then reveal the top card of your deck. If that card is Wind Element, put it into your hand. Importantly, nothing about this requires that you play Mage. However, Mage does get to use this on the opponent's turn to get an Enlighten counter off of Rise level 2. But if you can build a wind-heavy deck, this is a nice way to just be able to like try and find the pieces that you need to get to get to the game state where you want it to be, really. But the wind cards have to be important for you. You can't use this to draw an advanced element card. So it is better than Scry the Skies in the fact that the card goes to your hand rather than to your memory. But it is worse, and it has fast, and Scry the Skies is slow, but it's worse in that it can't dig for anything, and it can't dig any deeper than 3 cards. If you don't see any wind element cards there, you can just put all 3 on the bottom and draw a random card. However, you can also use it to set up a non-wind element card and just show your opponent, hey, I'm going to draw this Arcane Blast next turn or something. And if, it's actually not that bad to do it that way either. So I think it's a solid card. I think Mage is going to like it the most, but I'd be interested to see if other builds have enough wind cards they really care about seeing. Like Lorraine finding a cleave, her cleave attack with this could be pretty sweet too. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how much this gets played. Reclaim, another one where it's going to be interesting to see how much this gets played. It's a 2-cost fast action mage spell with return target ally you control to its owner's hand and floating memory. All this does is it's a fast spell, so you can use it to protect an ally at instant speed. If your opponent goes for like a removal spell, you can reclaim the ally to your hand and then replay it next turn to sort of like blank the removal spell, get the floating memory, and then replay the ally. That's where it's going to be, I think, really useful other than reusing on-enter effects. But if it's even better if you can use it on something that has an on-enter effect, and you get the best of all worlds that way. So but yeah, that's what it's for. It's a really protective card. It can be played in any class. Again, it's not the class bonus. There's no class bonus on it. But I actually don't even think it's best in Mage necessarily. I think this is going to be better in like something like Tamer, where you have a really big scary thing you want to protect. Your opponent goes for like a removal spell on it, and you just go, nah, okay, I'm just going to replay that again instead. Sorry. And you get floating memory too. Second Wind. Second Wind is a fast action warrior spell for cost 3. Wake up target ally. Class bonus, that ally gets +1 attack until end of turn. As a warrior spell, this allows you to wake up an ally and get a damage buff on it, but as a tamer spell, this allows you to wake up a gigantic ally to attack a second time, like our Virtus, like our gigantic lion. You know, you can wake that up, or an Aramis that's been able to build up, you can wake it up. I actually think this is very playable in the tamer deck too, because the +1 power is like a nice class bonus, but like not that important. And the fast is kind of cute with it too. You can actually wake up an interceptor when an opponent has rested it or is not expecting you to intercept, or you can wake up an ally that gets attacked to just retaliate with it instead, and end up taking out their attacker. So it's very flexible. Cost 3 is a little bit, again, to hold up. It's tough to hold that up on your opponent's turn. I think you're more often just going to play this offensively on your turn, but in decks where it really matters to wake up allies and attack with them again, it's going to do what you want it to do. Tempest Silverback. This is an 4-cost, 4-power, 4-life ally tamer beast ape with Pride 5. And the class bonus is it gets +2 power and +2 life. So just like our Blazing Direwolf, I feel like the Tempest Silverback is like the shoe-in gigantic beast to have in Wind Tamer this time. It has Pride 5, so Pride 5 is not too hard to hit, and it is just huge. It's just a big monkey. So if you need big monkey's here for you. Windrider Mage is a 2-cost ally mage human with 1 power and 1 life. It has stealth, and it has class bonus. At the beginning of your recollection phase, you may return Windrider Mage to your hand. If you do, put an enlightened counter on your champion. This is, I think, a pretty cool card for mage decks to play as a way to just keep building enlightened counters. You can stack up enlightened counters fairly quickly. I especially like this in the Rye Mana Weaver deck, again, where you need those enlightened counters also to copy spells as his endgame strategy. But in any Rye deck, just being able to stack up those enlightened counters with this ally, you can get an attack off with it. It's kind of hard to deal with because of stealth, so it's going to be a lot easier to be able to return it and replay it every turn. It is going to tie up some of your cards every turn playing it, but if you can manage to, like, you get to level 2 and you have the Windrider Mage coming back to your hand every turn, as well as you're playing cheap spells to gain enlightened counters on your turn and maybe your opponent's turn, you stack up those counters really fast, and she'll start to accrue you a number of cards pretty quickly. So I think it's pretty sweet for those decks. Arcane Blast. There's not much to say about this. This is one of Rye's big win cons. Efficiency with cost 11, but Rye's able to stack up his level once he gets to level 3 to make it cheap or even free sometimes. It deals 11 damage to target champion. 4 Arcane Blasts is all you really need in your deck to finish the opponent off. It's not always as likely. You probably want to have other ways of doing it, but if all you can do is draw a few Arcane Blasts and a little bit of Plink damage, then that'll get you the game also. So this is Rye's iconic win condition. I don't think they always have to play it now that we've seen stuff like Advent of the Stormcaller. It's not a requirement that Rye plays this to win the game, but I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a Rye deck that doesn't want to slot at least some of it in. Arcane Disposition is one of Rye's strongest comboing cards. Not win condition, but cards that sets up the combo. It's a 3-cost action mage spell with slow. Draw 2 cards. At the beginning of the next end phase, discard your hand. And then class bonus, draw a card. So the beginning of your next end phase, you do have to discard your hand, but that's only a penalty if you still have cards in your hand, right? So Rye's Arcane Disposition allows him to effectively draw 3 cards, and then as long as you can keep putting more cards in your memory, playing more cards, you can just stack up tons and tons and tons of cards that way. Rye has to have a pretty safe turn when he plays this. That's the one catch, is like you want to be able to have interceptors in play, not be relying on something like a spell shield or a water barrier to protect yourself on the next turn, because you're not going to be able to hold anything up on their turn unless you can stack enlightened counters and then draw a bunch of cards on their turn and then hope, I guess, that you draw into one. But as long as you can kind of have a safe turn, this is, I think, in Rye Mirrors, this is a card that can completely change the game, because if you can get to level 3 first and then take a safe turn to just like draw a million cards, your opponent might get to level 3 the next turn. If they can't kill you that turn, you're going to have a gigantic advantage on them. So I really like it in that matchup. But yeah, it's a great card, one to consider. With Rye decks, I think you really want to just think about, what is my sequence of cards that I'm looking to play once I get to level 3? And this may be a part of it. Also a part probably of getting those like giant storm combos for Mad Mage as well. Arcane Sight, a free action mage spell with fast. Your champion gets +1 level until end of turn, draw a card. This is just a quintessential. I don't think it's not the most powerful card, but it does a little bit of everything Rye wants it to do. It replaces itself in your hand. It gives you an extra level. It can be played at fast speed. It's again for these like Mad Mage combo decks. I really like that card because it's just it allows you to get an untap and a power buff on the Mad Mage and attack again, and then replaces itself, so you can keep on rolling with your turn. But I don't think every Rye deck is going to need to play this. But it's not bad. But it's also one I usually send to memory earlier on in the game too. Crux Sight. Our sight for Crux is a fast 0-cost action with draw a card, and then you may pay an additional 2 as you activate this card. If you do, banish this card as it resolves, then return a Crux element card from your graveyard to your hand. So it's a 0-cost cycle into a different card if once you hit Crux, or you can pay 2 and then banish it to get a different Crux element card from your graveyard to your hand. I think usually more useful if you've been in level 3 for a couple of turns and you've been able to play some of the stronger Crux cards, getting back a Spirit Blade Ascension or the Spirit, the one that wakes her up, the one that wakes up your champion, can allow you to do another gigantic turn. So it's very useful then. Not, I think, the most important card, but does unlock some win conditions that you don't always have access to. So not a bad card to play either. Spirit Blade Ghost Strike, a very solid Crux attack. It costs 0. It has 1 power base, and it has on attack, you may banish a card from your material deck. If you do, your champion's attacks get +1 power until end of turn. Not this attack, but all attacks your champion does. Banishing a card from your material deck lets you banish another sword in order to pump up Lorraine Crux Knight's power buff. And then if you are playing any of the ways to wake your champion up and deal multiple attacks, then you're getting that +1 power on all your attacks, plus the 1 power from this attack, and it costs you nothing in hand to play. So, if you're building your Lorraine deck in order to do crazy multiple attack combos, this is probably a 4 of in your deck. If you're not doing that and you're relying on like allies or something instead to deal the bulk of your damage, then you're not necessarily going to want to play any of this card, maybe just a couple of it. I'm not totally sure. This has an old rules note about Spectral Shift. It used to have an ability called Spectral Shift on it, but that has been removed from the card. So an interesting note for the devs to go ahead and pull that out now, because there's let me see, is it on the Prelude? No, it's not even on the Prelude version. It just doesn't have it anymore. All right, onto the Luxem cards. Korhazi Lightblade is a 2-cost ally assassin human with 2 power and 2 life. It has class bonus on attack. Reveal a card from your memory at random. If a Luxem element card was revealed, Korhazi Lightblade gains critical 1 until end of turn. So you got to remember that you can set up your memory this way. If you have a bunch of Luxem cards in hand, you can put 2 Luxem cards in your memory to play the Lightblade. Attack with it, you're guaranteed to see a Luxem element card. Bonus if those are Luxem element cards that do something when they're revealed from your memory, because this is another card that sets that up. And then getting critical 1, super nice again with another combo here with our Poisoned Dagger. You can banish the Poisoned Dagger the turn you do this, deal 1 damage to something. Then when the Lightblade attacks, it will deal the +1 damage will be on top of, I guess, the critical. Actually, I was trying to combo with critical, but I don't think that works that way. If attack damage would be dealt by sword with critical 1, double the damage unless an opponent discards a card. How does this work? If that unit would take damage, it takes that much damage +1 instead. I am not positive, and we're gonna have to get a comment maybe from a dev or something. I'll post in the pinned comment here once I've confirmed how this works, because I'm not 100% sure. If you're able to, it looks like it's 2 replacement effects. And if you own both replacement effects, you might be able to stack them in the way you want, which might allow you to increase the damage by 1 and then apply the critical to double it. That's how it would work in Magic the Gathering. I'm not sure if that's how it works here, so we'll just have to get a confirmation on that. If so, it's great with critical. If not, it's just fine. Yeah, otherwise, this is just a solid critical creature, good stats for a cost, and then gives you a method of revealing cards from your memory. So again, if you're building your assassin deck to do a lot of that revealing Luxem stuff at the end of game, then that is the card for you. Gleaming Cut, we're featuring the same character here. Again, a 2-cost attack assassin dagger with 2 power. On attack, choose and reveal a card in your memory. If the revealed card is Luxem element, it gets +2 power. It becomes a 4 power attack. So this is one that reveals cards from memory. It also is a reveal effect card. It has class bonus, element bonus. Whenever you reveal Gleaming Cut from your memory, you may banish it. If you do, draw 2 cards, which is very, very sweet. So this is a card, again, if you're doing this reveal cards assassin build and you are doing anything with attacking, you're probably going to play 4 of this because it does everything you want it to do. It can turn into more cards, which can extend your turn, extend your combo, go for a kill that turn. So yeah, really great card for that. And the Luxem Sight card. This one is a fast cost 0 spell with draw card. Element bonus, whenever you reveal this card from your memory, recover 3. So that is kind of a cool way too of like element of assassin to be able to sort of play the grind game at the end and sort of gain an advantage a little bit over a couple of like final turns, recovering 3, maybe multiple turns in a row just to keep recovering cards. If you can reveal multiple Luxem Sights, this recover can get pretty out of control. So I actually rather like Luxem Sight in that, but it is going to be a little matchup dependent again, right? Because like Rye doesn't necessarily care too much about it. If he knows it's going to happen, he's just going to try and kill you in 1 turn instead. But yeah, of all the sight cards, I like this one probably about as much as I like Rise, which are like, I think those are a little better. I think the Crux one is a little lower. And we'll look at the Terra one in just a moment. Gaia's Songbird is a 1-cost Terra ally tamer animal bird with 1 power and 2 life. It has class bonus on enter. Reveal cards from the top of your deck until you reveal a beast ally card. Put that card in your hand and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in a random order. Great card for tamer to play to be able to find the gigantic beasts that win the game. I think this is going to be a shoo-in in decks that are trying to get big like Virtus plays. You can even only play like Virtus as your only beast or Arima as your only beast or something and guarantee that you find it. You will be a little one note then, unfortunately. If the opponent deals with your Virtus, then that's going to be a problem. But yeah, it is an option because this will go until it finds a beast ally. So if there's only 1 beast ally in your deck, you're going to find it every single time. Which is certainly, I think an option to think about too. It'll be interesting, but I think even if you don't do that, a lot of your beasts are giant allies and all you're looking for usually is just like a big thing to beat your opponent down with. And I think Gaia's Songbird, is going to be a shoo-in card for those tamer decks because of that. Meadowbloom Dryad. So, this is one of our non-ally, non-beast tamer Terra cards. Ally Tamer Dryad. With 1 power and 3 life. It has Preserve, which is a Terra-focused keyword that says when this ally dies, or when this card goes to graveyard, either way, depends on the card. This is when the ally dies, put it into your material deck preserved. As you materialize, you may instead return a preserve card to your hand. So this can go to your hand instead of materializing a card on a future turn. And it has class bonus. Whenever Meadowbloom Dryad or another ally enters the field under your control, put a buff counter on target ally. So this, for a non-animal, non-beast card in the tamer decks, it has to be pretty useful and pretty good. This is a pretty strong ability, especially if you combo with the call the pack, call the herd, the one that allows you to put a beast into play for every ally every animal ally you control. Then suddenly you're going to trigger a whole bunch of buff counters onto your allies however you'd like. You can push a whole bunch of damage that way. If this is sitting in play, your opponent has to answer it, or you're going to be able to like do some like crazy like multiple woodland squirrels pumping up. You can pump up the Dryad herself, or you can pump up some other ally that's like tougher to deal with or something. Yeah, I mean, like this is a pretty cool, you do kind of build around it. I think you want to build your game plan around getting this out, but when you do, it's hard to get rid of because you can keep preserving it, bringing it back into play. And it can do a lot for you for sure. And finally, our last uncommon here is Terra Sight. This is the Terra Sight card. Again, it's 0-cost fast action with draw card. And the only other thing this has is Preserve. So as it resolves, it'll go to your material deck. So you can basically, this gives Terra the ability to always have a 0-cost draw card in their material deck. So as the game goes late, I think this is a really unique thing about Terra in that every other deck will eventually like run out of material decks if a game were to super grind and go super late, whereas Terra will always be able to have something to do during materialize, and that can give them an incremental like long game advantage as well. Otherwise, I think this is a little lower. I think this is more around the Crux level because it's not that important for your game plan, but it can give you that card advantage you need to finish the game. So All right, guys, that's it. This is our longest one yet. I can't wait for commons, but that is our review of all the uncommon cards in Grand Archive TCG's first expansion, Dawn of Ashes. If you did enjoy this, I'd love if you'd let me know in the comments below if there are any cards that you're particularly excited about. Leave a like on the video, and you can always subscribe to us for more Grand Archive and other TCG content. And then shout out to our patrons. Our patrons are the ones who support the channel and help us make all this content. I'm out here doing hours of content here because of you guys, so thank you guys so much for your support. And if you want to catch our other videos reviewing the rest of the set, they will be showing up right on the screen here. So go ahead and click another video if you want to see more set reviews for Grand Archive TCG's first expansion. Otherwise, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.